Us. And we're on. So,
All right. Okay. All right. Hey, bro, what's up? I'm Vin,
and I'm Jeff.
and welcome to our podcast. Okay. We're just two guys that got together. We work together, and we understand that us men, what we have to go through. The struggle of just following, social norms, culture norms, all that. Um, my testimony for starting this podcast and stream is recently I've been just being there for my friends and family, specifically guys, even coworkers that are dealing with mainly, let's say, like relationship problems, career problems, or financial problems. And I was like, you know what? I want, all of us to get together and kind of just share our struggles and what we go through. Just kind of get some like a bonding platform, a camaraderie together. Jeff, what do you think?
I would agree. I came on board because I have kind of always been a sounding board for a lot of my friends. A lot of people would come to me when they're going through hard times, and many people say I give pretty good experience, even though I'm, still pretty young. I'm only in my 30s. I like to think I've experienced a lot in my life. I've been many places, done many things, and uh, I just kind of want to be a part of something that could grow into a community and help grow bonds between people and, share some of the things that I've been through, hear some of the things you guys have been through. And, if the two of us can make a difference in even just one person's life, to me, that's worth it.
Nice. So today's gonna be our pilot episode. Just opening up and just letting everyone know what we're about, what we're doing. So for this week, we want to just talk about the general experience, just generally what men have to go through, what we do, what we struggle with, and experience. As a disclaimer, what we talk about in this podcast is not absolute or universal truths. These are just generalizations, stereotypes, and not everyone will fit or relate to everything that is said. Everyone has different experiences, but that's the whole point of this is we can join together and share them, um, and that's the main camaraderie point of the podcast.
We do have a little quote to get this journey started, and that quote is: "Mental health is not a destination, but it is a process. It is about how you drive and not where you're going." And that is from Noam Spancer.
All
Probably
right,
butchered
Jeff.
that name, but
um, Hey Jeff, let's talk about the struggles of being a man. First topic I want to touch on is pressure. A lot of pressure from like family, career, and friends. We can start with, let's say, with family and friends, like relationships. A lot of pressure, I guess, especially in like, let's say, our parents' generation of like, hey, you just be a man, right? A lot of saying of like, be a man. Just take it like a man. Yeah. What you got?
so with the whole saying "be a man, take it like a man," that causes a lot of strife in young boys' lives. So being a kid and being told that on many an occasion, it kind of makes you shelter yourself, like emotionally, from the world and from other people. Like, I can't express that I'm upset about this. I have to be a man. I have to be the strong one in this situation. And that doesn't set the building blocks that young boys and young men need to really grow in life. They bottle everything up and it turns into issues down the road.
Right. And like they don't build up enough skills, like a good social or support group, right? They don't have like they don't know how to express their emotions correctly, right? They're told is just to bottle up and take it. So like growing up, then you don't really know how to express if you have some like kind of weird feelings or you don't understand about something. We don't know who to go to, or or if if you have multiple men that are struggling with this, you all get together. It's all just a um, a hodgepodge of like, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what to do.
And then you don't express things correctly, and sometimes that can turn into an even worse situation of not knowing how to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. So it's a lot of like bottling up, and it doesn't help with the constant pressure as we grow up, right? More responsibilities, more um just more what's the word?
I
More
mean, responsibility kind of hit it on the head there. Like,
yeah.
as you get older, you have more responsibilities, whether it be, getting a career or starting a job, and you have to, do your best at work, but then, you start a family and you have to be the rock for the family and be the support system, but who's there to support you is the main question with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if and for a lot of men, when you do show emotion, you're made fun of or you're ridiculed or, a lot of double standards of let's say being attractive versus being creepy, or if a woman had done something and then a man did the exact same thing, we're ridiculed for it.
Specifically with showing emotion.
Yes.
Like, it's never usually frowned upon for a woman to cry if they're upset with a situation or they're hurt by a situation. But how many times have you seen a man cry or show, what is statistically deemed as weak emotions and then be ridiculed for it, whether it's by spouses, parents, friends, bosses, and then it loops right back into the whole why you crying? Be a man.
Right. Um, so
But
yeah, I frowned upon to show emotion, and it's like this fine line you have to walk of how do I be strong, keep and be like that token of being a man, while I also balancing out how to express those correctly and getting the correct outlets and support.
and what it usually turns into is negative ways to express that. There have
Mm.
been many people in my life that I've met that never learned how to deal with sadness, anger, frustration, and they turn to things such as alcohol, which is never the route to go.
Yep, yeah. So if there's not a good outlet for it, then they're gonna turn to yeah, like you said, alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling. It's a good one too. Just any, or even gaming, right? There's addiction to gaming as well. So
Gaming can be an addiction, but it is one of the more healthy outlets as long as you use it correctly. I don't know if that's a bad
yes.
way to say it, but it's
And
kind of.
I'd say addiction is in the case of like it starts to get into it starts getting in your way of your life goals, your relationships,
Oh, yeah.
etc. Like, yeah, that's what I mean by addiction.
Like, if you're
It's
not
especially
going to work because you'd rather sit
yep,
at home and play World of Warcraft or,
yep.
you know, miss a family member's special event because you're like, ah, well, I got to do this raid in Destiny.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean by addiction. And you're correct, there are worse addictions, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
alcohol and drugs will be worse than gaming, but in general, they all get in the way of living your life fullest potential.
Now, with that fine line that you were mentioning, what do you think defines that line? Like, what's it mean to walk the line, in your opinion? Like, when you look at that statement and try to relate it to yourself, what's it mean to you?
Uh, fine line is when I'm going through life and I have to make sure I have everything on hand, right? I have everything going for me. I'm like, okay, is my career on set? Are my relationships on my family on set? And then but then when I'm struggling or when I need help, I have to make sure I express it correctly, right? I can't just be I can't like we've talked about, I can't just cry and just be whiny or complain or anything like that, because then nobody takes me seriously. So for me, I have to be like, okay, I have to struggle and do my best, and then at the very breaking point, then I when I ask for help, I have to make sure I do it correctly. I can't just um flail about and just do whatever. I really have to, even when I am struggling, I have to consciously think about how I struggle, if that makes sense.
I get what you're saying.
And what about you? What's your fine line?
So it's kind of a difficult one for me because I was raised to be like the man's man. The man had to provide. The man couldn't show emotion. Like I was ridiculed a lot as a kid because I was a very emotional kid. I used to cry a lot, and as I got older, I got punished for it. So there was a good period of my life where I was more or less devoid of emotion, so I could walk that line, better myself, put that in quotes because it really didn't do the best for me. I ended up in some dark places, but I tried to
Right.
walk that line and be the man's man, learn to, get different skills to get a better job so that way I could one day provide for a family. And I didn't go about it in the right way, and I ended up making a lot of wrong turns along the way.
Right.
But that's stuff we can dive into in later episodes of the podcast.
Yep, exactly. Um, Another point we want to talk about is the double standard, is being called creepy or toxic if you don't follow societal standards, or if you're not the societal cultural standard of attractiveness. Um, I think a good example is, for example, let's just say going up to a woman just to say hi or introduce yourself. A lot of times, most of us have been rejected. If we didn't look a standard type or a certain way. Um, I think I don't know. It just hurts. I think it hurts more for us because we get rejected more often than not. Uh, and example, getting compliments, right? Females can easily get compliments anytime, every day, but for us, it's kind of, I guess, like for example, if we compliment each other, let's say in public, we might be called gay or ridiculed.
Right. I mean, I would agree to an extent. To me, the stigma more falls on the fact that the man is expected to make the first move. But
Right,
it goes along with walking that fine line because, like you said, if one of the biggest fears of men is rejection, in my opinion, I've known a lot of
right,
men they can't stand the thought of being rejected. And
right,
like you said, with the whole, societal definition of being attractive,
right.
if you're not in that societal standard of attractive, you're going to get shot down really quick.
Yep.
And with the compliments thing you brought up, that is something that I wholeheartedly agree with because, like, yes, women get compliments all the time. Men usually don't, but when they do, they will hang on to that for years. Literally years. Like, you will talk to a man and be like, when's the last time you got a compliment from somebody that you weren't expecting? They're like, oh, dude, I remember this one time 7.5 years ago on a Tuesday when I was at Starbucks and this lady told me she liked my shirt.
Right. And I think the reverse goes true as well, right? Like we like our rejections also hurt the most too, because I think it's cultural for people to be like, oh, the men can take it, so they just the insults are just kind of non-filtered. I remember like at 13, I bring this up all the time because I think it's just so funny. A girl came up to me in middle school and was like, "You're ugly. You look like a duck." And it's just like it was just so out of nowhere that it sticks to me, right? Like I was 13, so that's 15 years ago. So 15 years later, I still remember that, even if people don't, obviously people don't disagree with that statement. Even I know that that's a false statement, but it still sticks with you.
Right. So would you argue that men hang on to both the compliments and the insults.
Yeah, yeah, I think so because I think negativity just sticks harder than positivity, right? I think I remember a saying where it takes 10 positive comments to undo one negative comment you've heard.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. So,
Now, have you had any experiences with the whole like toxic aspect, like toxic masculinity? Because this still falls in walking that fine line of, you know, being a man but not being overly masculine.
yeah, so I I personally don't what's the word put myself in with the I guess the words would be alpha male or toxic masculine group. I did encounter one time I worked with a guy. He just started 2 weeks in, and two customers come in and they're like, "Hey, did we pay here or did we pay up the front?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I've only started. I don't know." They walk away confused. He turns around to me and he goes, "Oh, they wanted me." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah. They asked where I could pay, but they seriously just wanted my number." And I'm like, I like there's confidence, but there's also overconfidence, over arrogance. I think I think that plays into toxic masculinity. If you're just too arrogant or too confident, a lot of the aggressive traits are very apparent. I think that's my personal definition of toxic masculinity.
I would agree. So to me, it goes in with, like you said, the alpha male perspective. I have
Okay.
known some people in my life that they they didn't think their shit stunk. Like they were the definition of that alpha male, and what they said was law. And I'm like, how do you get through life like that? Like, it's not it's not wrong to be wrong from time to time. You're not always gonna be right. But that's not how they saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's this that's the fine line of kind of being a man is being able to be strong and be able to provide and support without overdoing it. But then on the other hand, you can't we can't be weak or show too much vulnerability or emotion as well, right? So it's like we have to balance it out, and it's a lot. It's hard. It's not an easy task, right?
Well, it's
And plus,
exhausting.
it's exhausting, and two, it's not. Nobody gives us a guidebook. It's not taught in school. If your dad, isn't, let's say, a lot of people's dads aren't the best dad. They don't know how to show it to your kids, to your sons, and then it's just this cycle over and over again of that quote unquote toxic masculinity going down every generation.
And that's one thing that I'll say I was pretty blessed on is I think my dad's one of the best people in this world to me.
Yeah,
Like to me that man can do no wrong. He has always shown me how to be strong, but he has also showed me how to express emotion. Now granted, I didn't grow up with my dad. I only got to see him every other weekend for 20 years. So he wasn't always there to be able to guide me, but I have learned quite a bit from him. But even though I'm in my 30s, I'm still learning how to deal with things today.
yeah,
Uh, from, like, a good example would be my father in law. He is, like, as close as you can get to a saint without being a saint. He's a
right,
great
exactly.
person, and he has so much wisdom to impart on people. And to me, that's one of the greatest things ever. And he loves to teach people different things, especially when it comes to how to deal with different scenarios.
Yeah, I would say the same for my dad. Like, and the thing is this, my dad, if you want a definition of like the toxic man, is my dad. Every vice you can think of, he did it. I'm gonna be completely transparent here. Is he was not a good dude, just in every way. But like for some reason, he cared so much about his kids. So he made sure like I had everything, but also disciplined me when I needed it. You know, he was very really able to balance it. The only thing he lacked was how to go about living as a man. You know, for him it was just the typical like, oh, just go do it. You know, just suck it up. For same with for like relationships wise, he thinks, for example, I'll give you an example. He thought I was stupid for waiting till marriage, for example, or like, oh, I want to wait for the right person. For him, it's like you just have sex, like you just do it. That's it's a you know what I'm saying. So there was a generational difference that I had to figure out on my own, and I didn't have as the oldest sibling as well. Nobody could teach me how to live life as a guy.
Yeah, I didn't have too many good examples besides my father growing up, mainly because I grew up in a house of girls. I was the only boy that my mom had. I had two older sisters, two younger sisters that I grew up with, and then that was it. So I learned a lot from like my friends and their dads
Nice.
when I wasn't able to see my dad.
Right. And that's a
But
good point. I want to. Oh, keep going.
I was gonna say, like, with the expression of emotions, though, that wasn't something I started to learn until I was in like my mid to late 20s.
Right. Exactly. And right. Yeah. Our teenage years. Oh my gosh, that brings me back to like 13 through 16 for me. Everyone goes through the rebellious stage, and um, I was a horrible kid. Like I just got angry at everything. I just wanted to fight everyone, and I didn't care about anyone but myself. Because I didn't know how to express just being a teenager, being a guy, being how to was just frustrated with being called a duck, an ugly duck. Like how do you um yeah, yeah. With that being said, I did want to get a segue of like getting help, um, lack of resources and programs to just help men figure out what they're going through, what they're feeling. If you didn't have a good friend group or father figures, uncles, big brothers, anything like that, there's not too much, you know, socially.
Socially, no. There are programs out there, and for those that truly, truly, truly need them, I highly recommend you getting the help that you need. The bigger aspect of it is the stigma surrounding it. A lot of men in today's society, if you were to openly admit, yeah, I go to therapy, you get frowned upon for it. Oh, well, why aren't you just tough? Tough it out. You don't need therapy. But that's not the way I see it. Like, I will happily admit I go to therapy every week. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. So, breaking that stigma is. I think it'll come with time. Like, the younger generations are more open to it and frown upon it less. It's more so the older generations that are like, hey, tough it out, be a man. But that stigma is still there, and I personally know a lot of guys that will avoid getting that help because they don't want to be seen as weak.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's just not taken seriously as well. If like we talk about just everyday little commonplace struggles we have, and then some people just don't take it seriously. They're like, okay, that's silly, and then they kind of disregard because it's like, oh, just man up and just do it. It does like, what are you even complaining for?
See, and those people don't understand, though, like what may be viewed as a trivial notion to you might be detrimental to somebody else.
Right. I remember it brings it back to there was a lady who was a complete feminist, and she fought for women all the time. And I think one guy had said to her like, "Oh, that's really convenient that you only focused on the women." So she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna study what it's like being a man." So she redid everything. I don't know if she fully transitioned, but she lived life as a guy for 2 years, and at the end of her life, she ended up killing herself because she was like, oh my gosh, like being a man was way not. I'm not saying being a man is harder than a woman. Each has their own difficulties, but for her, she didn't understand what it was like to be a man. She thought it was so easy, like women had it way harder, yada yada. And then she tried it herself for 2 years, and then she ultimately killed herself.
I think I remember hearing about that a while
Mm-hmm.
back. I think I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But such is life. I mean, every side has their struggles. Like, there are struggles that women will go through that men will never understand. There are struggles that men will go through that women will never understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like like a period or pregnancy, you know. I
That's
will
something you
never
and I
under
will never understand.
we um yeah, so even socially I even understand like women with beauty standards and even they have their own social pressures and norms. So um and it's I think society has this problem of lack of understanding each other, right? We play victims to our own sides and then we don't try to understand the other, so we can never like get together and um move forward.
Right.
It's like both sides keep fighting each other, right? The alpha men or the um I forget the terms, but you know the people that are like, oh, all girls are hoes, or they're not all that, and yada, or they're very demeaning and think uh very lowly of other women, and same with women thinking, oh, all men are trash, yada yada. I don't think that's very productive socially and culturally on
Oh, I
both ends.
agree. Like, you need to find common ground. People need to learn to walk in other people's shoes, essentially, and
Right.
try to come to an understanding. Otherwise, as a society, we'll never grow.
Yeah. So I think that's a good reason of our podcast. This is the good pilot episode of like, hey, we just want to understand each other, give each other's experience, um, and that's why we want to also bring up guests every week to just everyone to share their own views and perspectives on what it's like living, and their struggles and everything, right? So,
Yeah. And that being said, like, I have noticed a few people in the chat here over on the stream. We're not trying to shoot down how women feel in certain situations. We're not trying to say that women have it harder, men have it harder, anything like that. But the message that we're going to be going for with moving forward in this episode and all other episodes to come is it's going to be focused on the struggles that men specifically have to go through. So I just kind of want to get that out there that, we're not trying to say anything one way or the other when it comes to men versus women. We are just trying to solely focus on the struggles and daily life and things that we have to go through as being men. So this is going to be driven towards men's mental health, but that doesn't mean we won't, look at the other side of the coin probably in every episode. It's just I just don't want people to be like, "Oh, well, why aren't you saying anything about women's health? Like, are we not important?" That's not what we're trying to do. Like, we are not trying to shoot you guys down. We just wanted ours to be focused on the men.
yeah. And ultimately, it is for women's health. If men are able to treat women fairly and well, then women also fare better socially.
That is a good point.
Yes. Because obviously we'll get into relationships and stuff like that. How men and women deal with each other in the workspace, at home, everything like that. But this is our pilot episode. So after this, we're gonna go into our first chapter, which is emotions. We're gonna do a motion per week, and next week will be about anger.
Where we will have our first guest speaker who will come on with us, and they'll kind of be here. It'll sort of be like interview based, but also just kind of like they chime in either when we ask them a question or if they feel they have something they want to add to what we're talking about. We do want to break it up and kind of be focused each week on one specific thing because we don't want to get lost in everything essentially, if that makes sense.
Okay. You want to give our motto, Jeff, when we end the podcast?
We can do that. So, since this is our first week, I would like to mention this to anyone that's going to be listening in the future once the podcast is uploaded, anyone that is in the chat on Twitch here, or anyone watching in the future on YouTube. We do have a Discord server. The Discord server is the Brothers Bonfire. And if you are wanting to join our journey, join the community, this is a safe place where people can come together, meet new people, make new friends, talk about different things, their experiences, and even collab with us to give us ideas or stories to share on the podcast. If you are on Twitch, the link is below me. In the About section, you will see a Discord section. On YouTube, I will end up putting it in the description of the video. Vin, where is that going to be located on the podcast site?
Yeah, we're gonna upload every Wednesday. I will send a link to. I'll put the link in the About page and in the Discord. So it's streaming every Sunday, and then we'll upload the podcast and the videos on Wednesdays. So.
Well, that being said, thank y'all for listening to our pilot episode. We appreciate each and every one of you. All are welcome to join that Discord server, and as well, each week once we finish the podcast session of the stream, Vin and I will hang around for an additional hour or so, and that's where we will start addressing anyone that's in the chat. Feel free to ask us questions, talk to us about anything, or just hang out and chill.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks for supporting our first pilot episode, and we'll see you next week.
And on that note, so the podcast has ended. This is now the after. I'm going to go ahead and load up what I call a Zen game. It's just going to be Power Wash Simulator to go on in the background, and Vin and I will be paying attention to the chat if anyone has anything they would like to say, talk about, anything like that.
Yeah, and also like feedback, right, on the podcast or anything, just to elevate us up.
Right.
It's first time,
The
so
recorded session has ended, so.
I need to download that.
I'm going to change the stream.